Hello there. So I wanted to just do a quick review of this Buck Knives 110 Folding Hunter. So I haven't had it too long, but I've been so impressed by the quality and the value for money that I thought I'd just do a quick review for anyone who's interested out there and might be considering a similar knife. So I had a very similar looking knife when I was a child. Probably based on the 55 model, which is much smaller, and it's an aesthetic that a lot of knife companies have copied, so it's quite a I guess common looking aesthetic, this knife. But from what I understand, actually Buck Knives, or Al Buck I think it was at the time, he was the one who came up with this particular design, I think in 1962 or 3, something like that. And this 110 was the original version that he developed. And from what I can understand, his idea behind it was, although there were obviously, locking, folding blades at the time, what he wanted to do was come up with a knife that the hunters in particular could use instead of a fixed blade knife, which is obviously bigger, more cumbersome to carry, etc. So he wanted a folding version that they would still feel comfortable enough to carry, and they would believe that it would perform all the tasks they'd need out in the field to replace a heavy fixed blade. So that's what he came up with, and he developed this knife, and from what I understand, it's been in production ever since, and it's probably been one of their best, if not their best seller ever. So it's, to run through the basic specs, solid brass on the sides here. This is wood. I believe they went through a phase of using like what I can't remember, diamond wood or whatever, but this I believe is wood again. It's a stainless blade, locking. It goes through a special heat treatment process that they developed in-house, I believe. So although stainless, it actually does have a really good hardness rating, and it's quite a durable blade. It's got the locking facility. So one of the key points for Buck when they developed this was in order to replace the fixed blade, it needed to be quite a secure catch, and that certainly is. It's quite weighty. It's not light. It's a big knife. All this brass and steel. It's got a nice weight to it. And it is quite large for a pocket knife. So just for comparison, here's a sort of fairly typical sized bushcraft knife. And that's the 110. So not massively different in proportions really. So it's quite big for a folding knife. But that was, a deliberate choice so that it could function in the field as an equivalent to, well, not this, but a more of a hunter shaped profile blade, but a similar sized knife to that. So if we have a quick look at the measurements, it's just under a 4-inch blade, just over 9 centimeters. So fairly decent, substantial blade. When it arrived, it came really sharp. I've used it a bit and I've not sharpened it since, but even so, it's still really lovely and sharp all the way across. So I think when there's so much choice out there, and obviously a lot of companies have copied Buck, and you can probably get a very similar looking knife from a number of different companies. But I think what made me go to Buck, I mean, obviously it's nice to get the original from the company that invented it, but I think there's a few other things I'd look for when I'm looking to purchase a knife. Obviously, firstly would be quality, and the quality, I'd break it down into functionality. Is it going to perform the tasks you want it to perform? And then also, is it well made? Is it going to be durable? Will it last? So if you're going to spend money on it, is it going to last long enough for you to enjoy and appreciate and use it? The second thing that I look for, and that is more of a personal choice, is if I'm going to spend my money, I want to spend it with a company that I respect or that I believe has a good ethic. And so I don't necessarily want to just spend my money with these massive corporates that run sweatshops in the Far East, etc., etc. So it's a personal consideration, but I think it's worth considering when you're spending your money, because you're giving your money and giving the power to these big corporates who then, decide how they want to use it. Invariably, they're not looking after the earth very well. So, as I say, it's that could be a contentious point, but it's just my personal approach. So I would rather give my money to a company that I respect. And within the ethical sort of debate for me also, if it's a company that exists, in this case Buck is an American company, I like to see that the American companies or British or European companies actually run their manufacturing operations in the country that they exist in. For me, that's quite a big selling point. And in this case, Buck, in the main, I think pretty much most of their products are still made in America. So that was a big plus for me. And then, of course, probably could be the key driver in many cases, but certainly a very important driver is how much does it cost? What is the value point that you're going to consider and make you spend your money on a Buck knife or maybe a much cheaper alternative? Now, for me, I think the first point on quality, it is very well made, sharp out of the box, seems to have a lovely steel, very well finished, nice wood. There's not been any corners cut that I can tell on this knife. It also came with a leather sheath, which a lot of knives don't. They don't come with any kind of cover, particularly a folding knife. But this is a nice strong leather sheath. The knife is made in America. I think the sheath might have been made in Mexico. I think it might have said on when it came. But it's a sturdy one, got a good belt loop. It's quite large, obviously it's a big knife, but it is very nice to see it coming in a nice cover. I've been wearing it on my belt quite a bit in recent weeks, and although large, it's not too cumbersome. So in terms of quality, it definitely has the feel of a very good knife. I've not put it to extensive hard use in the field, probably unlikely to do so because it's quite a nice piece to keep, sort of as a memento. But I have been using it to open boxes, cut rope, etc., etc., and it's obviously been fine for that. From an ethical point, I think if you look into Buck and their backstory, and it's all available on their website because that's where I looked, and also reviews, they're still largely, I think, family owned to a degree, and they still, as I say, have their operations still based in America. And I think a lot of the products they're used by the people who own the company, so they actually know what they're making. A lot of these big corporates get big, and then they get bought. They go public. The shareholders only care about profit, and they do everything to maximize profit. And often that means degrading the quality of the products they make. From what I can see and from what I can tell from this knife, Buck has not gone down that route. They're very proud of their heritage. They make a good point about that on their website. They still make all their products in America, well, to a large degree. Certainly this one was. So there's jobs then for locals. They also provide money to various conservation charities or groups that look after the environment. Some of it that is for hunting, of course, but they are preserving environments for that hunting, and it has knock-on effects. So that is another debate, but they definitely are proud to say where they, invest money. They obviously take pride in their history and in their products, and they don't want to lose that. And I think that's unusual in big companies these days. They don't tend to care too much. They'll make a big song and dance about their backstory and their history, but when you look into it, they've shipped all their manufacturing offshore. They're cutting costs wherever they can. And in some cases, I find that it's quite insulting to the end user, because you buy into the story, you get the product, and you realize it's not anything like the original that was developed. And I'm sure there's a lot of examples out there that people can think of. I don't really want to get into naming them, but there are many examples of these big companies that have gone down that route. And so it's quite difficult to tell sometimes if you are buying, you become loyal to a brand because you respect the quality, and the next thing they do is that they cutting back or undermining that quality to maximize profits. So looking at this knife, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this review was I am quite impressed, and I think credit where it's due. I mean, clearly Buck Knives doesn't need my endorsement. It's not going to make even a ripple in their world, but I think credit where it's due. It's a well-made product, still made by the same people in the country of its origin, and that's unusual in a big successful company these days. In terms of price point, I think that's the third point, which I think Buck have done a really good job. So I think when I look most recently in the UK, which is obviously they've got to pay import taxes, etc. from America, it's just over £70 for the knife delivered with a sheath. But I think in America they were something like $55, which is really, I think, incredibly cheap for a high quality made in America product with that heritage. It's very strong. They've not cut corners on anything. You can't really go wrong. And I think, even if you are looking at the cheapest knife possible, it's a risky business going really cheap, because you can end up buying something that looks good and just falls apart after the first use, or isn't really designed for what you want to use it for. It ends up as a sort of, might have been cheap, but it ends up as a paperweight. So I don't know, I think there are obviously other knives, and I'm sure people can easily be able to name a few that are still made in the country of origin, that are substantially more expensive than this, and you can argue whether the quality is much better, or I don't know how they can justify. In some cases there's some of the bigger companies who make very good products, but ultimately it's still a folding pen knife or pocket knife, and they can be 3 to 4 times the price of this one. So this one's got quality materials, it's been very well made, it's been made in America, and yet they can sell it in America for $55. I think that's pretty impressive. So, I think definitely I have a lot of respect now for Buck Knives. And if I find other models that I like the look of, then I'd certainly consider supporting them again. And I think if you are considering this knife and you're able to afford it, and as I say, it's not that expensive actually, it's pretty reasonable for what it is, then don't hesitate. It's a really good, well constructed, good quality knife. So hopefully that'll help someone, and yeah, thanks for watching.